I would like to call the Wednesday meeting of the Kansas Board of Education to order. Again, John Bacon is absent for our meeting today. Next on our agenda is approval of the agenda, but we will need to add an executive session for the discussion of non-elected personnel to that agenda. So I would ask for a motion including that change to our agenda. Moved by Dina Horst, seconded by Kathy Bush. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, that's a 9-0 vote. Before we go to the first item on our agenda, Sally Cobble wanted a moment to make an announcement.
Thank you. I would just like to express that Liberal passed a huge bond issue last night, almost 3-1. And they had a very comprehensive plan that they will be building new elementary schools so that they can go back to neighborhood schools. And then it was just amazing on how it was done. But for something to pass 3-1 and the magnitude, they also had to pass a sales tax with that the city agreed to help them with, and that passed also 3-1. So I just wanted to uplift them this morning, and I'm sure they're still celebrating. So.
Carolyn Campbell, you wanted to make a
yes,
statement
ma'am.
too?
I hadn't thought about it till Miss Blunt Cobble. I'm very happy to report that Topeka Public Schools, their bond issue passed also, and I think it was 64% to whatever. But I was very much concerned about it, and I went to a couple of presentations, and what truly sold me about it was that a lot of that money is focusing on safety for our children, the FEMA shelters and all. And once I heard that and other things, I was able to, when asked in the community, I was able to tell them that I would be supportive of that bond issue. But I'm very happy for our children and our staff.
And Dina Horst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I heard on the news this morning that Salina also passed their bond issue, and it was 66% to something. And it was a mail ballot, which we have never, ever done within our city before. The county has done some things of that sort, or communities out in the county, but the city itself was pretty major, and that will allow our school district to add kindergarten classrooms to our elementary schools, and it also has safety features. And South High needs a lot of attention, and this is going to give it to them. So, kudos. And thanks to my colleagues in Salina for working so hard to get it passed.
3 wonderful examples of how our communities value and support their public schools. Before I have Scott and Susan come up, I wanted to let you know that in your folder is a corrected item for attachment, which has a few changes that had been made previously to licensure regulation wording for out-of-state applicants. They're not major things, but you might want to pull that out so you can refer to it as we have our presentation and discussion. Okay, Scott and Susan, we're ready for you.
There we go. Just don't go anywhere without it. Okay. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you again. This is a follow-up from, we had given you a update in February on a set of regs that we've been working on for a while. And so it's coming back to the process. Time for us to come to you again as a receive item for ultimate vote, so as to move it on to the Attorney General and the Department of Administration for review, as we work through this continually. Just as a way of reminder, the work that we're addressing specifically is around providing an effective educator in each classroom, and these, of course, come from board goals and objectives. We're looking continually to identify and reduce unnecessary barriers to teacher licensure and renewal, and we have regs addressing that. Identify and determine flexible licensure requirements for CTE educators, and we're addressing that. And then review special education licensure requirements. So we specifically have some regs around those, and there are a few others as well. This is, obviously it's minutia work, and so Susan is going to walk you through, you have in your board packet how it's lined out. She'll walk through so as to make it as clear as possible for you. Here's what we're really trying to get to, and a lot of it's, how it lines up and the legal wording and whatnot. The last slide, if we're able to hold it till then, the last slide, we will address how the legislative actions line up with this work. So I know if you'd rather ask questions as you go, so be it. But we do have the slide at the end. We're cognizant that there will be questions around that piece of work. So with that, Susan Halbert will start walking through this.
I promise I'm not going to take the regs and go through line by line. The way that you received these in your board packet, it did take each regulation number and summarize, and then obviously you have the set of regs. What I'm going to do today is do it by topic, and then on the slides you'll see a reference to the page number and the regulation number that then you can go back and refer to in your packet. And I just realized, I'll provide you with a copy of the PowerPoint so you have those page references. And when you look at the regs, just a brief reminder, the strike-throughs are language that is in the current regs that is would be done away with. The underlines is the new language. So when you look at them closer, keep that in mind. Okay, the first big area was the special ed. And what we're doing with this set of regulations is to allow special ed is that initial teacher prep program, what we refer to as direct entry. So within the regs, we're proposing 2 different licenses based on the level of that license. So at the elementary level, we're including that there's an endorsement now called Elementary Education Unified, K-6, and you can see the page reference or you can look at the regulatory language. The intent of this is to allow someone with this license to be placed in either a SPED or a general education assignment. It's that flexibility use of that license. And then at the secondary level, it would be called Special Education Generalist High Incidence. And this is intended to be a supportive special ed kind of role assignment, but these individuals can certainly add content endorsements by testing. The regulations also maintain, just as now, if you're a licensed teacher, you can add special education as an added endorsement area. So the regulation maintains that option. However, the field is recommending that we change the current name of adaptive or functional to high incidence and low incidence. And that's a kind of a national movement, so it aligns with what's going on in all of the other states in teacher prep and licensure related to special ed. And then there's a tweak, the general education competencies. It's reworded to align it to new professional education standards. So special ed creates direct entry, changes the name of the current adaptive and functional endorsements. The second big area is the career and technical education piece. And we're really doing two things in this current set of regs. We're creating that technical education permit certificate, and we're also revising the current restrictive full technical certificate to align it with pathways language. So let's take each one separately. The permit certificate, this is the one yesterday when you heard Concordia refer to the need that she had for the yes, culinary arts, thank you. This would address exactly what she's talking about. So this is a request by the district to say we need this person on a part-time basis to offer this career and technical education course or courses. And basically it says if that person can verify their competency, and there's multiple ways that they can do it, industry credential, experience only, a trade competency exam, an appropriate license, an appropriate degree, then we'll say, yes, here's your license. It's 3 years, and it's renewable simply upon the school district requesting that. It is limited to the LEA that requested it. Okay? Then the second thing that we're doing around career and technical ed credentialing is, again, as I said, revising an existing credential. This would be for that business person or trade and industry person that's now no longer really in that occupation full-time. They want to teach full-time. So we're revising that to align it with pathways. It was aligned to the old vocational technical language. A couple of things for flexibility with this, that there is a professional ed component to this, and we're saying it doesn't have to be delivered through a higher ed institution. Another approved provider can provide those pedagogy or professional ed competencies to this individual. And we're also adding a new piece in to allow people, educators with a teaching license or a full technical certificate, to add a new career and tech ed subject based strictly on occupational competency. Right now they're limited because they have to have so many years of experience, and we're saying take away the experience. It's equivalent to adding a licensure endorsement by testing only. Okay, so that's the career and tech ed piece. And then out of state. This is the reg where we were trying to create some additional flexibility for those out-of-state applicants. And what it came down to was really enhancements around some experience considerations. So the first change involves those alternative route completers, those people that are now going to the licensure review committee. So we're saying that if they have at least 5 years of experience under a standard license, at least 3 consecutive in one district, then they will no longer have to do that LRC appeal. So that will take another group of people out of that real small percent that goes to the LRC. Yes.
I didn't.
Ken Willard.
Thank you. I'm just wondering what the basis for the 3 years consecutive in the same district is, because I can envision circumstances where that could be a problem.
The intent behind that was that they didn't want someone, usually if you have someone that has moved and gone to a different district, so you have someone coming in that has 5 years of experience and they've been in 2-3 districts, sometimes the implication is that they haven't been real successful. So I think this was an attempt to make sure that, yes, by demonstrating that you stayed in the same district. It doesn't have to be in the same building, in the same assignment, just within the same district.
Well, it is possible that it is an indication of that kind of instability, but on the other hand, often a teacher in the family is not primary position, and the other spouse could have had to move, for whatever reasons, and that would exclude somebody who might be good. I'm just...
Yeah. We started out, the original recommendation was, I think, 8 years of experience.
Oh, I know.
So there was a
So-
lot of discussion, but this is what ultimately the Standards Board was recommending. So.
Is there any flexibility to that based on the reasons for the moving? It seems to me that there should be some built-in flexibility.
At this point, there's not. I mean, it's simply worded in that section. When you look at it, it says 5 years, 3 consecutive.
But Susan, they could do the appeal, couldn't they?
Certainly. We're not taking away the licensure review committee process.
If they didn't have the 5 years, there's still a
Right.
way they could.
Right. This just says, as we look at it, staff and licensure, we're pulling away and saying those no longer have to go to LRC, but if there's someone who doesn't meet that, they certainly could still be heard by the LRC. And that would be one thing that they would consider, because the LRC does look at things, each case on an individual basis.
Okay, I just hadn't read the appeal portion of it there. Because I just think there, if that were hard and fast, that could exclude somebody that was good.
No, LRC is still the fallback ultimately if you don't meet the letter of the regulation.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Another option that we're building into the out-of-state, this is really to allow more individuals with leadership and school specialist licenses to come in at the professional level. We built several options for teachers to come in at the professional, but previously we didn't include one of those options for leaders and school specialists. So this would certainly enhance the ability for some additional individuals to come in at the professional license level. Basically what it says, if you have 5 years of experience at any time, you meet recency, you can come in. So it removes a restriction, just allows one more option to come in at the professional level. And then the third thing that will really add some increased flexibility is that the way that we start counting experience to come in at the professional license level, we'll do that at an earlier point in an educator's career. And let me explain with an example for this one. Right now our regs say you have to have reached a professional license, and the way we count experience, it's hard. There's inequity across the states. For example, in Nebraska, your initial license is 5 years, so you could have taught 5 years and not yet have the professional license there. In Missouri, you move to the professional license maybe after 2 or 3 years, so there's some inequity. So we're hoping that that will get rid of that. That's also the reason why we define standard license in our regulations, to allow that to happen. It's a difficult one to explain, but it has more to do about the ability for us to process that initial application.
So for those of us who haven't read through all of the
The regulatory
regs,
language.
tell us the difference in terminology between a standard license and a professional level license here.
Okay. The professional level license is the second tier, and each state defines that differently. So in Kansas, you move from the initial, which is the very first license, to the professional. So it implies that you've done something, you're an experienced educator, but that is defined differently in every state. So you can't do that until 5 years in Nebraska. Other states, you can do it after a year. Technically, in Kansas, you can move after a year of mentoring. So when our regs say, well, that person has to have reached the professional level license before I can issue them as their first Kansas license a professional, that causes some barriers. So we're denying experienced teachers access to come in at the professional level. Does that make sense?
It does,
Okay.
thank you. Ken Willard.
Kathy Bush is actually on before me, Jana, I'm sorry.
Yes, Kathy Bush. I lost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mine actually goes back to the special ed. And my question, when they get this direct entry license, will they then be eligible for, and I'll use probably what maybe is old terminology, but class within a class, or will they be able to actually teach a special ed class? Or does it allow flexibility there?
At the elementary level, certainly, that allows total flexibility for that individual. It is real similar to the Early Childhood Unified, where you can teach, special ed classes, gen ed classes, all the content. At the secondary level, because if you think about, there's no way you could deliver all content at the secondary level to that person, so that's more of the supportive type person that would go either into a classroom with a gen ed content teacher, or the students might come to that teacher for additional assistance.
All that help?
Yes.
Okay.
And then that's also why we want to make sure that everybody understands that they would be allowed to add those secondary people content endorsements,
Okay.
because we didn't want to limit them to just having now a special ed license, and maybe 5 years from then they would say, I want to try teaching gen ed. So
Then on this out of state, on the leadership school specialist, so, and I believe you said it was 5 years experience, is that what you said?
the additional option says right now they can come in at the professional level with at least 3 out of the last 6 years of experience in that leadership or specialist position and having reached the professional license.
So if they're a person, though, that comes, maybe they just got the license in another state and they move, then they're not eligible for...
They come in at the initial license.
Okay, so they can still come in at the initial
Yes.
license, but
Yes.
does that go through the appeal process?
No.
So there is an option for
Right.
licensure that way?
Remember, very few applicants have to end up through the licensure review committee process. We issue lots of out-of-state at the professional level as their first Kansas license. We issue another large group at the initial license level. And then we also have, for people mostly around testing, we have 1-year licenses, exchange licenses, and so forth. And those are all, again, new beginning educators. But everything we're doing here is enhancing the options for experienced educators to come in at the professional level. That's really what they're about.
Okay, thank you.
Ken Willard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this just, for coming in from out of state, just counts all their experience toward our requirements for professional license rather than their professional
Yes.
license experience.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm just thinking of, you just mentioned new teachers, and so I just want to get a handle on that. I can think of an instance that came to me where someone had gotten all their education, I think, in Texas, and went and taught for a year or so in California, and then they tried to come here and they couldn't get in. So without jumping through a lot of hoops, they weren't really accepted. So this would, for a new teacher who's just licensed in another state and moves in here, what change has been made to accommodate that?
Again, most of these have to do with experienced educators. So new teachers, just like new teachers in Kansas, start out on the initial license.
Right. Okay. But there would not be any additional education they would have to get here if they had been licensed in another state?
Again, we have that real small percent that end up having to go through the licensure review committee under our alt route reg. So we're trying with this first thing to say, let's remove another chunk of those from having to do that if they're experienced. But some of those may still end up having to go through LRC.
Well, I actually wasn't thinking of the alternate route. I was thinking of somebody coming through a traditional route.
Yeah, those traditional routes either come in at either the initial or the professional. Brand new teachers, testing is a requirement for an initial, we currently accept out-of-state tests.
Okay.
So we have some licenses. Testing sometimes is an issue, so they will have to take our tests, but we have licenses to let them start in teaching while they have the opportunity to take the tests.
So it's pretty much just open reciprocity.
Yes.
Okay.
If a traditional route, it pretty much always has been.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Jim McNeese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back to CTE, the certification or the validation of the person's individual credentialing issue of experience or license or whatever, that's the responsibility or it is the responsibility of the local board to do that? Or is it?
Yes, they will have some guidelines. My team is we're scheduling meetings with Jay Scott's team, and we're taking each of the cluster areas and looking at all the pathways and say, what is the appropriate verification of competency in that particular pathway?
Okay, so you're giving them guidance.
Yes, we will. Certainly, it'll be published.
Parameters.
Yeah, we anticipate it'll be published in the licensed personnel guide.
But it's still a local LEA.
Yes.
Is
It'll be an assurance statement on
Right.
probably in the application.
And in reporting that, they'll report that to us how? So it gets
There'll be
on?
an application form.
Okay,
And because it will be a credential that we issue, and that allows us also to require fingerprinting.
all the other requirements. Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up before I call on Kathy. The ones that are in the experience-only category, that's how they're going to be licensed. How many years are we recommending of experience?
We're recommending, it's actually worded as 4,000 hours. That's 2 years of experience.
Okay. And then what about pathways that we do not have, such as energy? That is not one of our pathways. And Concordia, that was one they were trying to implement. What if it's not one of our pathways that they're wanting to go ahead and hire someone into?
Certainly, I did hear that piece yesterday, and Jay indicated that they were working with Concordia, that he's very interested. And of course, then that will have a rollback effect, and we'll work with them to make sure that we can issue a credential for that.
Well, I know the advisory council for CTE had heard a presentation about that a year ago, but I didn't know that anything was happening with that energy pathway.
And I would guess that would fall under one of the existing. The cluster is the big high level, and our regs, address that these credentials would be for those big clusters. So.
Okay.
The pathways are
just
it's not
see that as-
specific, so we can adapt, certainly.
Now, Kathy Bush. Sally Cobble.
I pass. You answered my question.
Dina Horst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question has to do with the fact, sort of going back to the process by which CTE pathways are approved or not approved, or that sort of thing. I realize you're not involved in that, but is there a way for us to write the regs so that it's not prescribing which ones we license, but that it's according to approval by CTE? Because
we were very careful not to refer to specific pathways in the regulation that we use the highest level possible, the clusters.
Okay.
And so I don't think any changes in creating new pathways under a particular big cluster, I don't anticipate that's going to be a problem
So
because
it's-
we bypass that by being high-level generic.
Okay, so we don't really talk about specifics.
No, we
Specific
say, if you look
areas.
at that particular regulation,
I didn't bring it with me today.
and I'll make sure you get a copy of it. It's Reg 91-1-220, and there'll be a little section that says this credential will be valid for teaching in, and then it lists the clusters.
Okay. And then, and perhaps my question needs to wait, but I know there are some changes in what your recommendations are that conflict with what the bill that passed. And so how are you going to reconcile those?
Okay, if we could defer that, let's get through these and then the last, we'll talk a little bit
And
about it.
that's why I said what I said. so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Madam
And
Chair.
I think the rest we can move through fairly quickly here. Mentoring, one of the changes that this includes, in 2008, the state board moved, we had the Kansas Performance Assessment, the KPA, which was a work sample. That was our performance assessment that educators had to complete to move from the initial to the professional license. They moved that back into pre-service and imposed mentoring as the performance assessment to upgrade. So what we're doing here, that was never formalized into a regulation. We're doing that, and at the same time, we're taking that opportunity to say, districts, they have the flexibility of providing whatever mentoring program that they want, but we're just saying that because mentoring and support of new teachers is so critical, that the program that you provide them has to follow some type of model or research-based guidelines. Okay.
Sally Cobble.
Is there any paperwork afterwards that has to be sent back in?
It's a check-off. It's a verification that they provided the mentoring. Okay, some additional amendments. Teacher leader, there's a sunset date in that regulation. When we implemented, everybody wanted to see how this worked, and we were working on the assessment to finalize that. We were still piloting it, and so we have to address this one to take out that old sunset date. Because we're still, the assessment, it switched from ETS to being developed by CETE. We're still in pilot, and so we're putting in a new sunset date, 2 years from the effective date, which will allow that time to complete. And then also, we've tweaked the reg a little bit to make it clear that teacher leaders must have had classroom teaching experience. So it clarifies that. Restructuring the leadership licenses, we're rebuilding the requirement that you should have gained the competencies at the building level prior to completing a district program. And then the recommendation is to increase the experience requirement from 3 to 5 years. Teacher leader has always said you have to have 5 years to be a teacher leader. It makes sense that this should align with the teacher leader. Plus the duties of the building leader have changed over time. They're supposed to be that instructional leader. So the recommendation is to increase that experience. Then the GPA is a clarification. We're clarifying that when we're looking at GPA for the school specialists, these are reading specialists, library media, counselors, and the leadership, that all we're looking at is that coursework that was part of that program. We're not looking at all the comprehensive, any graduate course that they would have ever had to take. We're going back to the old term elementary ed because nobody knew what early childhood through late childhood generalist means. So we think that'll simplify everybody's life. There is in Regulation 208 that our application, this is a professional practices enhancement, that our forms will include a completed child abuse and neglect central registry release. And this will allow us to be advised by that registry if there's some substantiated claims against a teacher. And we're revoking a reg. It has to do with a special needs career and tech ed. We've issued maybe one or two. It's really not needed. And then finally, there's a couple of amendments around accreditation of teacher ed units. Well, it's really just one amendment. There used to be national NCATE and TIAC were the two national accredited entities for teacher prep education units. They combined and they joined together to form CAPE. Our current reg talks about that we adopt by reference the NCAPE processes. This just updates that and says we adopt CAPE. And then finally, this formalizes, remember I talked about the KPA and the state board in 2008 moved it back into pre-service, and this formalizes that's to be done as part of initial program completion. So that really takes care of what the amendments are. Now let's talk about the legislative implications. Most of the amendments that you just heard wouldn't be affected by this. So all the things we just talked about, those additional amendments, the special ed, the out-of-state would. The career and technical education, the permit certificate that you are looking at to move forward is actually more flexible than how it's worded in the legislation, but it takes care of that piece. And then depending on the legal interpretation, we would have to eventually make adjustments to our out-of-state regulations and other adjustments to accommodate those STEM degreed individuals. So I think at this point we need to wait on that legal interpretation before we can go into any more details. But I think it's important that we do move forward with what we have, even those out-of-state, so that gives us that flexibility now and that we don't have to put that off and see what happens with the legislation.
Susan, where do we get the legal interpretation? Where and when? When we submit it, or how does that work?
I'll defer to Diane, if I may.
It will start with our own, with Cheryl and Scott looking at it and seeing how that matches. And then, if you approve it to work through the system, it will go to rules and regs and to the Attorney General. So it starts here in this house and then moves out, similar as what's been done before.
This is a dumb question, I'm sure, but when the legislature, if they were to act on this, it wouldn't have to go through rules and regs, or it would still have to go through rules and regs?
Well, one aspect of that is if you look at the legislation, the statute always says that the state board has to develop rules and regulations around what they're saying, so to address that piece of it, but the bigger, higher level, I don't know.
Okay, well, I've just been wondering about that. Thank you.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm finished except for questions. And remember what these are here for you today is that first step in the legal process is approval. It's a receive item this month, but approval then to send it to Attorney General and Department of Administration for their review, and then they would come back to you to set the public hearing.
Ken Willard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you identify specifically where we diverge from the legislation?
I don't know how, There's really three pieces in the legislation. And I want to emphasize, at least the language I've read, that you have to have a commitment for hire by a local board. So it's really providing a local school district with some additional options for teachers. But there's three pieces to it that says, one is about out-of-state teachers not being required to complete teacher preparation. They have the out-of-state license, but it does say they have to take the praxis exams. The second one is real similar to the CTE permit certificate, that you have the occupational competency, and it's the district request. And then the third one is that individuals with some very specific degrees in the STEM area would not have to do teacher preparation. So that's why the out-of-state would need to be adjusted slightly, and then we would have to accommodate those STEM teachers.
So do we submit this as it is until we make those determinations, or?
Certainly, that's what I would encourage, because that allows us to have that flexibility, and then later we would have to do a different set of regulations.
Or just amend them to accommodate the
Right.
law? Right, okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Kathy Bush.
Kind of a follow-up on that. The out-of-state piece, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you said was the teacher would have to have a commitment from a district that they want to hire them?
Yes, when you read the statute, it says that. That's one of the, under number one.
Which is kind of similar to what the permit piece in CTE does.
It's real similar, actually, to our current restricted teaching license.
Okay.
Because that takes, you have a degree in the content. The difference is that the pedagogy piece, once we give them the license.
So is that any license area?
No, it's very specific.
Okay. And then the STEM piece, do those individuals also have to have a commitment from a district that they are going to hire them?
Yes.
Okay. So really the initial request comes from the district or in conjunction with the individual?
And again, I think now we're getting into details that
Okay.
I think it would be inappropriate to try to guess at what.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? I just have one. I wanted to know more, just a little bit more on people that are appealing to the LRC, if they still have that rubric or list of like 16 or 18 outcomes or whatever they were called that seemed so cumbersome to me.
Yes, there's two pieces. The review committee looks at the professional ed standards, and then they look at whatever set of content standards that, like the elementary or the biology or whatever. So
are those standards changing, or how long will they be? Because I think it was based on the standards,
Correct.
All of these specific things that
Correct.
It looked to me like it would be very hard for a committee of people to determine whether or not a person really had met those.
And we agree, and we're certainly looking at that, and we've kicked around, working with the licensure review committee, ways to make that less cumbersome.
Okay, thank you. I've just worked with a couple people that had gone through that process, and it's very, very time-consuming, and in the end, I'm not sure that the courses they had to take to meet the committee's recommendations actually were the appropriate ones.
We have a framework of a plan to try to streamline that whole process,
Good.
not just that piece of
Okay,
it. So.
thank you. This was very informative. I appreciate the information.
Okay, and I'll make sure I'll get you a copy if you want to go through the regulatory language and match it up to the page references.
Okay, of your PowerPoint?
Yes.
That's good. Thanks.
We'll be back next month.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, the next, Kathy Bush, did you have another question? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just saw that.
This one wasn't a mistake. The last one was. Kind of in reference to Jana's question, are those, and I know what sheet you're talking about, that's got all sorts of standards, are those going to be based on this new, and I think it's CAPE or CAPE or something, group, their standards?
No. CAPE is what we're talking about here is the process on how we accredit the teacher ed unit. And then the programs that they offer go through a program review process to see how they align to a set of competencies that someone going through that program should have, what they should know and be able to do. So at some point, we have committees that are reviewing all of those program standards, and you will see those in sets. Because we haven't done that for a while. But what the review committee is really trying to do is say, our graduates came out of programs based on these standards. Does this out-of-state applicant, is it similar? Do they have similar competencies? And it is cumbersome right now for the LRC process.
So that's what we're looking at.
That's what we're looking at, yeah.
Okay, and then I'd just like to thank you, because I'll have to say, I tried to read these regulations. So your explanation today was very helpful and much more understandable, so Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, Ken Weller, did you mean to press your button?
I try not to repeat the same mistake too often. When can we expect those licensure review committee changes?
We're trying to get it done as soon as possible. We have a framework, so we're doing things like how we notify the people, the correspondence. So we can ramp that up as soon as possible.
Well, it seems like it might be a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we're very conscious of it because those meetings, we deal with those.
Yeah, it's an
every day
process.
Yeah.
We have the ability to make it go faster.
Okay.
And I know that both Scott and Susan understand the urgency that this board believes needs to happen in that area, and so it's.
Okay, thank you.
At the same time, we're trying to reduce the number of people that have to go through LRC. So.
Good. Thank you very much.
Dina Horst. Hi. I'm back. I just wondered what the process will be. We submit these, and then if someone says, hey, you haven't aligned them with the bill, so we have to go back through the whole process again, or can we just strike?
Again, I think that I don't have that would need to come from our legal services office to say.
Okay.
And they're looking at it to see what implications, but I still think we need to move these forward and start down the path.
So we will submit these, but eventually when they come back, they may be in a little different format.
I foresee, rather than that happening, that it would require an additional new set of some amendments to accommodate the statute.
And I see Scott's here. Maybe he can add something to this.
I had a feeling you might have that question. So far, the law hasn't changed.
Because the governor hasn't signed it.
We operate assuming that it's not going to change because he hasn't signed it yet. If it turns out within the process, as you're aware, you submit the regulation to the Department of Administration, then it goes to the Attorney General's office. If the AG's office determines, well, this has now become new law and your regulation does not conform with the new law, then yes, we would have to go back, make some changes, resubmit those to you to ask you to send those to the Department of Administration again.
Okay.
My understanding is it's a very small part of the regulation
It is.
that would need to be changed. So I think that's why licensure is asking, let's get the ball rolling on the whole set and then we'll just pick and choose what we need to adjust, if we even need to adjust any of them.
Right. Okay.
That
That answers my question. I didn't know whether we could do the amending after it was suggested by the Attorney General's office, for example, or whether it had to go back through the process. So, or most likely will. So that's kind of what I anticipated you would tell me.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being here today. The next item on our agenda is to act on the board attorney contract. I would ask for a motion that we approve renewal of the contract with Gates Shield and Ferguson for providing legal services for the period of July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2015, with no increase in rate. Moved by Jim McNeese, seconded by Carolyn Campbell. Is there discussion? There being none, I would call for the vote. But Sally Cobble, did you have a...
I was going to move the motion.
Oh, I'm okay. We will vote on the motion then. All in favor, raise your right hand. 9 votes in favor. Well, Mark, you'll be with us for another year. Great.
Great, thank you.
We need to act on the appointment of Carolyn Campbell to the KSHSAA Board of Directors. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Sally Cobble. Is there a second? Seconded by Dina Horst. Is there discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. It's a 9-0 vote. And then we need to act on the appointment of Carolyn Campbell to a member of their executive board, the Kansas State High School Association. Do I hear a motion to do so? Moved by Sally Cobble, seconded by Janet Waugh. Discussion? Steve Roberts, my mind's kind of blank right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure that Carolyn wants this appointment. Is this something that you seek and want to embrace?
Thank you, sir, for your thoughtful concern. Yes, I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to serve on the board and the executive board.
Very good.
Ken Willard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just, Carolyn is not on the board at this time, on the Acacia board.
I am currently,
That's what I thought. So why did we vote to appoint her to the Acacia board?
because my 2-year term, this is for an additional 2 years
Okay.
term.
Well,
This'll
then
be-
don't we have to appoint somebody to replace her on the Acacia board if she's going on the executive board?
Did you look at the letter from Musselman in your packet? It explains you serve on her 2-year term for the Board of Directors. This will expire in June, so this is for the next 2-year term. And then you have to be on the Board of Directors to also serve on the Executive Board, and that term will also be for 2 years. So
Okay.
she'll be reappointed to both those positions.
Okay. Thank you, Peggy. Obviously, I did not read that, so.
Are there other questions? Then those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Okay, we have a 9-0 vote on that. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is to act on amendments of the negotiated agreement between the Kansas State School for the Deaf NEA and the State Board of Education. Dina and Mark are going to give us information on that.
Included in your packet are the red line changes of the fairly minor updates to the negotiated agreement. I think at prior meetings we have given you updates about the process itself. I will tell you that the employee portion has been approved, and so you would simply be asked to ratify those changes today. So,
And Dina, do you have comments?
I do not have any further comment, except that to move that we ratify the contract with the Kansas School of the Deaf.
Kathy Bush. Okay, so Dina moved, and Kathy seconded the motion to approve the amendments as presented in the negotiated agreement between the Kansas School for the Deaf NEA and the State Board of Education. Is there discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, so the vote was 8-0 with Steve Roberts abstaining. Did I state that correctly?
801.
8-0 with one abstention, I guess. We now have a report scheduled from our Communications Committee. Of course.
There's a live mic up there for you. So. Yeah. Being broadcast to the whole state.
Be more than that. I'd like to invite Sally to.
I need to say Jim McNeese so people will know who's speaking.
Is this videoed as well?
Yes, you are.
Smile.
A couple of things. First of all, that the postcard campaign that we did with the legislature and across the state has, I think, been a very well-received program. Several of you have indicated that, you felt like it's been a good communication, not just with the legislature, but with local boards, superintendents, and citizens in your districts. So I hope it's been of value to you. I've had comments from actually folks out of state who have said they know more about Kansas education now than they do about their own state. So I think we did help some folks. And I thought it was very positive. And I would like you to start thinking about for next year those items or issues or topics that you might want to see in a campaign similar to this. And at some point, we'll probably be asking for your feedback. And I hope you would gather feedback from your superintendents and boards as well as legislative representatives on the cards and see how, what they think and what we could update or do. Considering the cost of this operation, the cost benefit is astounding. It wasn't a lot. It's not probably didn't change a whole lot of people in different areas, but we were before the public in a very positive and supportive way that they appreciated. So anyone have any recommendations or ideas about next year or comments? That would certainly would welcome them at this time.
I'd just like to acknowledge Peggy and Denise and our communications department for
Thank you very much.
Making them look good.
Yes, the entire staff that helped us on this, Peggy and Denise in particular, they gave it their added professional touches that really made the message come through. So yes, thank you very much, Diane.
Cheryl Franklin was a huge part of that too.
Okay.
The process.
Thank you, Cheryl Franklin as well. So thank you. They did a wonderful job. And thank you, Diane, for commending them for that because they did.
Jim, Janet Waugh has a comment or a question.
I just basically have a comment. I mentioned this to Jim, I believe, and Sally earlier. I thought the whole board might want to know is that I got a very good response on these postcards. I forwarded them to all my superintendents and asked them to share them with their communities, and I had a lot of good response. Several of them did share them in their newsletters or various other ways, and also. One of my legislators, this is something I did not mention, but one of my legislators in a weekly report she makes and sends out through the email, which I receive, quoted the postcard and specifically the one on the responsibilities of the State Board of Education, which I thought was wonderful for the community to see what, in fact, our responsibilities are. So even the legislators, I believe, were.
Yes, I received quite a number of positive responses.
So anyway,
I didn't receive any
I just want to thank
personally
everyone.
directed negative responses.
Thank everyone for this because, also, and I did post it on my Facebook. And
You are so
it was
tech.
amazing.
You're just a techie.
I know. No, I'm not really, but but on
For our
Facebook,
age, we are.
It was amazing. The response I got, and I even had it. Texas loves us. So thank you thank you for your work and Sally's, but for the departments and helping.
Sure.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Carolyn Campbell.
Well, Jim and Sally, I too wanted to sort of share the same thing that Janet just did, working in the Capitol. The postcards not only touched the legislators, but a lot of the staff, because I actually had someone comment to me about the cost of this. And so I was able to share that it was all done in-house, that we developed them, and it wasn't a matter of a public relations person money, but they, so it was positive. It made me feel good that the number of people that were reading it other than the legislators.
Good point. Thank you very much.
It was a tremendous effort, and I compliment you, too, on doing something that hadn't been done before. So, thanks.
And truly, as Diane said, the staff here, did a great job. They turned a concept into a reality that helped it. The professionalism that they brought took it to another level. So again, the most important thing is we had a nice start. It's a real good, feel-good opportunity. It's not changing the world as it was, but it certainly presented us in a different way. And again, I would invite you to think about what we could do in the future along those same lines. That a year from now, we'd say, we've grown and moved on. And personally, from my perspective, it was a real learning lesson in boardsmanship in terms of making this all come through. I think we have some very well-defined parameters to work from. We're not trying to be in-your-face kind of thing, but keep our message in front of the public and our publics and our constituents, as we said in our goal, to keep our face there, in a very positive way. So I've learned a lot. I think we've got a good first step, so let's build on that and begin planning for next year. I'll be meeting with staff and talking to them about how we could do things a little better, and not to say just continue to improve. So thank you for that. One of the other tasks that we were assigned in our communications was to we want to recommend that we get out and talk to other constituent groups to bring our message about who we are, who we serve, and what we do to schools of education. And before you have a PowerPoint, and excuse me if PowerPoint, it's new, and I don't have the verbiage that goes with the pictures, but you do, okay? And I better get one. Oh, it's on the screen. It's on the screen. No, it's not on the screen because I didn't put it there. Switch users. I don't know if I want to do that. Just hit. Well, as we're setting that up, the purpose behind this is for, again, to communicate to stakeholders, a group in the colleges and universities, teachers that are coming out, administrators that are moving on, folks moving into administration, but at the colleges of education, presenting our message in a very positive way like we did with the postcards. I know this is an added responsibility or added opportunity to our very busy agendas already. But I would hope that you would take advantage, if you so choose, it's your decision, to contact the universities and colleges in your districts, or in accepting invitations from those that are not in your district. It's not just restricted to your district, that you could go and visit with them about what we do. And we're providing you a resource so you can go forward. You don't have to be Sally Cobble. We'll adjust it so it'll be your picture and a title. But as thank you, Peggy. And again, it's one of those opportunities to get in front of people and have something planned and ready for you, so you can use this. Okay, well, let's see. I need to put slideshow.
Jim, Kathy Bush has a question.
Not so much a question as a comment. I mean, I am up at Wichita State part-time in the College of Ed, and their dean's already received a letter about this, so they seem to know about this because they've already asked me about it. And we've talked about, they really think it's a good idea to get it into for their students to understand the role of the State Board of Education. So, I mean, obviously I'm there, so I'm pretty easy to get to work with them, but they also know that Jim's in our area too. So I think some folks are interested in this. I think it's good for the folks, students particularly, to understand what the role is, and just as far as education in the state of Kansas. So the folks at least the colleges have already gotten something. So yeah, so I think that's great. So thank you.
Yes, I've had conversations with some already, and they range from talking to actually the faculty to specific classes. So yes, there is some interest in it. I can't tell you that the interest is everywhere or as it goes along, but you can utilize this. This is a tool that you have at your disposal to use in those presentations. I know when I'm going out to speak in different areas, a lot of times it's the last minute and I'm trying to throw stuff together, and this gives me, just a tool that you can use. And we just go through it real quickly as you look at it, and you can talk about the great things, that are happening. If you look at the verbiage, we're only giving you recommendations. That is us. Nice picture.
Did you take that picture? I don't remember when it was taken.
It was taken when we first, I think the first day when we came on as new board members. Yes. Then it's kind of
January of 2013.
right, and then it's been reconfigured so you don't have all the information in the back. We had all the busy work behind the thing. Okay, and then one of the big things that I get asked all the time: who do you represent? How many are there, and why, and how'd you get there? It is amazing to me that how few people, even in those elected offices, know how we get there or who we represent. And so we take this for granted, but a lot of the people on the outside don't. And then this is basically all our stuff. It's nothing new, and it shouldn't be surprising to you in any way. And it's just in a colorful, presented way. You talk about it, and this is who we are. And by the way, I've got my postcards in a nice little thing, and boy, I'll tell you what, they come in handy when I'm going to, prepare for a presentation, or I'm going in front of, depending on which group, to have my facts, figures, and information there, because sometimes I don't remember it all as well as I should. And then some nice, colorful pictures. You can't get better than Brad, and $25,000. And Tell that to the new teachers, they'll get all excited. That's going to be me someday. And then, what's new in Kansas and what we're doing,
Thank you.
And then one of the things that we have asked for for all of us is to get better connected. Janet and I were just talking about, I need to probably be on Twitter more, especially about the positive things I do. And I'm always, oh darn, I should do that. And then I think, well, it's 2 days later after it, and they don't want to hear about 2 days later stuff. But one of my goals this year is going to be more of a positive presence on Twitter than I was this year. And that's where I'm going. I don't particularly like Facebook right now. Facebook and I are, more of I like to read it once in a while when I have nothing else to do, but I don't. So you figure out what's right for you. But also encouraging folks to go to our website at KSDE, and we have promoted that. We've sent it out and asked for links from the school districts. This gives us a greater presence and directs people, because there is just a huge amount of information, that's available on our website.
Janet Waugh had a comment. Jim?
No, I have a question. It's back to the very beginning regarding the letter that was sent out to the universities.
Yes.
Was that sent to everyone? I mean, I'm thinking of the community colleges. I'm thinking of the private colleges. Like, for instance, I'm meeting with someone from Donnelly College at home, the admissions officer, in about a week. He wanted to discuss state board with me. And I thought, I'm going to tell him at that time that I have this opportunity. But have we contacted those also?
We provided a list. At least I remember reading a list.
We have a list, but Peggy, I suggest that you send that list to all of the board members so they know
who was
where that was sent.
Because I was just curious because like Donnelly's a fairly small Catholic college.
I believe it was attached when I
Kansas City.
sent a copy of the letter to you guys, but I can redo that. There was the list of the unit heads
an attachment
from licensure that listed each of them with their emails, but I can resend that. I think there was 24.
I remember seeing the letter, but I didn't see it.
March 24th, I think, is when I sent that, right around there.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll forward it again in case it wasn't.
Maybe it needs to go out in maybe the Friday letter.
Thank you.
And that's a good question, because there are, different groups, and certainly I'm planning to contact the ones I haven't contacted, about 3, I think, that are on the list in my area, outside of Wichita State, that I personally will contact. Newman and Southwestern, and, make myself available.
I know KU, K-State, all those, Pittsburgh, all those, Emporia, they're all contacted, but I'm thinking of these small ones right in my own area.
Sure, you bet. And I believe they're on the list. If they're part of the State Department's,
If they have a
teacher prep program.
They have a teacher. Also, I kind of, in the back of my mind, was thinking that we might want to send that letter out again late summer.
Yes,
before, because we really we got some response from the schools, but they pretty well have their curriculum and what they're doing down. So I'm thinking that we might need to send another letter, July or something like that, to the schools. What on this PowerPoint, sometimes we get asked to do Rotary, Lions Club, etc. I think that this is versatile enough that you could also use it. I guess my question, I may be getting ahead of Jim on this, is there any part of this that is offensive to you? We need to know right away. But do you want to email to you to use it? Do you, and then you download it to a little stick? Or do you really want a little stick with it on it? Or, what's the best way for you to be able to use this? I think by having something universal like this that we all use, then we're all saying the same message. And things don't get as when 10 people go out to talk, sometimes the message can get obscured. Have you ever played that game, Gossip? But with something like this for us to all feed off of, we're all delivering the same message. And so I'm not saying you have to use this. I'm just saying that it would be probably beneficial to us as a board to be having some uniformity in what we say.
Sure, and that resource is also in the postcards as well. You know, when you're using those, you know, like I said, I have all of them available to me, and I've used several of them in presentations, and it works really well. You know, gives me a consistent theme to work from. So, as Sally indicated, if there's any questions, now's a good time to bring it up. Good.
Jim, just quick, while I stepped out, am I okay to go ahead and personalize that front page and send it out to everybody, the PowerPoint? I mean, is that okay? All right.
I think the first page is probably really safe.
Surely that's not controversial.
We stuck with the theme that we've said, nonpartisan. Stick to the facts. You know, this is all stuff that we've agreed on, and at one time or another, through consensus or through, our motions and such on the floor. It's really about us. It's not.
Well, and I think, Jim, we really wanted to keep it non-campaigning because there's 4 of us that fits, or 5 of us, that our time is, and you got to know when you're doing a campaign speech and when you're doing a state board speech, and so this is very non-political.
My question is, will the verbiage be on this as part of the PowerPoint?
Will people see the verbiage?
Yeah. Or is that for just
that's
for us?
That's for you.
Good, because that would be the only thing that wouldn't be flexible, and I was going to request just the slides so we could personalize it through what we say, although we want to stick to the.
We're giving you some, some stuff to work with. That's why I'm saying the postcards also work very well, and other resources.
Right. The picture will be what folks see, and then as you are the presenter, the words you'll scroll through, unless you want to memorize it.
Thank you.
Other questions? Very good.
I just wanted to say one of our goals is to improve communication, and I again want to compliment Sally and Jim for taking on this challenge and doing such a tremendous job. I think the work they have done has done more to improve our communication than about any effort we've had in the past.
Well, again, I have to defer to staff. We come up with the ideas. They put this together in a way that met our requirements, and with feedback, and the editing continues. But truly, the professionalism of our staff is what gives it the bounce, the visual bounce and such. My PowerPoint would not look like this. But so for Peggy and Denise, again, thank you very much. They've done a great job.
I should have said thank you for your leadership.
Leadership would probably be a little better, in fact, a lot better. So yes, and to you as a board, this past year and a half, it's been I think it's been a very good and positive step. I think you've taken as a board a more aggressive mode. You've proved the things we've spent more time talking about communication, I'm sure, than you have in many, many years, at the board table. Exactly. And I think that's a great conversation. And if I could just add one thing, that in this is something you can add if you so wish, to this. But I end my remarks when I'm out speaking in the public, typically with a praise of the board. I think in the year and a half that I've worked with you and been a member on this board, I've seen us work together on some very, very tough issues, And though we might not agree all the time, we always agree on one thing, that the kids come first and that we're doing the best we can for public education in the state of Kansas. And I always tell them, we have a great board, and that's doing a great job. So with that, they're changing the subject here for just a moment, along those same lines, actually. The other, yesterday, Jana began our meeting by reading a statement to us into the record regarding teachers and education in Kansas after some of the things that have gone on. And I appreciate very much that Jana read that, and with others on staff here put this together. I was thinking about that through the last Friday when I was at the legislature, and then over the weekend listening to what was going on. And I thought her remarks were very good, and and very germane to where we are. And I think we need to. I would, as a communications team, recommend to us to take a look at the remarks that Jana made yesterday, and make those more widely available as we can, sending them to our listserv and putting them on our website, the remarks, I think the folks are looking for direction, they're looking for support, and I think this is a way to do that. So we've given you a copy of what Jana read the other day. I know no one spoke in any way after Jana's remarks, but quite frankly, it wasn't an appropriate time. But we'd like to, as a communication team, recommend that we send this out and distribute it across the state.
And I would like to say that I cannot take credit for these remarks. Sally Cobble and Peggy Hill had played a great role in this whole effort. So,
well, let's give the credit to Peggy.
Okay.
Because I have ideas, but Peggy makes them work.
So thank you. Thank you, Peggy.
And it's not just about this past weekend. I don't want to get bogged down in that, because from my role and our roles, you just can't. We have asked a great deal of our teachers, whether it's IPSs, whether it's standards, whether it's curricular changes at the local level, whether it's all the things we've asked them to do. They're working very hard, and then we throw at them the new assessments, and then we have problems. And I was very impressed with their presentation yesterday. How, boy, I tell you what, we're responding very quickly. And if there's one thing I've heard from the field, and while I've been sitting here at the table, has been the appreciation of the department and CETE on their responses to the problems they faced. But it's the end of the year, and at the end of the year, it always does us well to make sure we're thanking the people in the field who are the ones that live with our decisions, and that we appreciate, we understand, and we respect, who they are and what they're doing. So that's what this basically comes from.
The only idea that keeps coming through my mind is that we send it out to the superintendents and we ask them to please make sure the classroom teacher sees this. As we move on in the next year and we start thinking about what we'd like to do next year, any of you have any great ideas on how we can communicate with the parents and get directly to the parents and directly to the teachers, we're open for suggestions. And email us, let us know, because I still feel like that's a communication piece that we could do much better with. And so as we move on as a committee, I'd like to get more direct with the parents and the teachers. So any great ideas you guys have, please feed them our way.
But with May 6th coming up is National Teacher Day, appreciation. I think it behooves us to take a stand that we support our teachers in the state of Kansas.
Well, and this is one way we could do that?
This is a small way, nothing huge.
The one thing you learn, when you have your own business is that without the employees, you can do nothing and you are nothing. And, without our educators, state of Kansas education is nothing. And so somehow we got to keep them going.
So if there's no, protests or additions, comments, we'll move forward and disseminate this as best we can to folks and let them know that we understand their challenge, we appreciate their efforts, and we respect their dedication to our students in the state of Kansas.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry.
We have the business card, Jim.
We have business cards.
It's in your folder.
We have what?
In your folder is, we never have thought through that business card, and actually, that was a temporary till we decided what we wanted to do. And Jim, here's the business card. Yeah, used to do, and we just said we were going to make an executive decision.
Yes, it's all coming back. I was just in a hurry to get off of this. The business card that you have before you in your packet is pretty much a more traditional business card than we have, that we used to have, basically. We're going back to a former design. And quite frankly, I like that design. It identifies us as a State Board of Education. Obviously the other card does as well. But I'll just tell you, quite frankly, as we move into getting new cards, this is the symbol, the clarity of the design, and I think it really works better than the ones we have right now. That's
Carolyn Campbell.
Thank you, ma'am. My suggestion that I noticed that what is missing from this card is the fax. And in the past, my card had a fax number, and it was the office number here if someone calls here and wants to send a fax. Don't be sighing like that.
No, I was not sighing for you. I don't have my glasses. Yeah, fax number. Yes, whatever number that you wish to have on there we will put on there. I don't need a fax number myself, but if you're, we're flexible on that. We've always provided, flexibility. But thank you. I think that's a good suggestion. And really, you were talking about for the department, not for me. Yes. I think we're running out of lines, but yeah.
And Steve Roberts. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, is there an opportunity where we could add to this card a shading of our district or something like that? I'm thinking that it might not be as important for me. It would look like a little smudge if you actually highlighted my district, which geographically is pretty small, about the same size as Kathy's maybe. But for the rest of y'all, I would think that maybe if you had district 5 or 6 or 7, you might want it kind of shaded or something and say what part of the state you represent. Maybe a little arrow or star. I don't know. Just something that says, because when you say, like you were saying, people don't know. You say District 2. What's District 2? Nobody knows District 2. Even the party people I campaign with don't know what District 2 is. So it doesn't really tell people much.
I think you're right. That would be that could be a good way to communicate. But I have to also go back. One of the things that from a marketing communications point of view, is to keep it clean. To keep it direct. They're asking us, or we're distributing our cards typically to people who want to contact us. But I realize that would be there, and I hadn't thought of it, but as I look at it, it starts shading things out. It creates another layer of production. Right. If the board so chooses, we would certainly do that. My recommendation, though I really like, what Steve said, and, my other goal is to keep it clean and just straightforward. When I get a business card, a lot of times, now this is me talking, I sometimes get distracted by all of the stuff they have on it. I want my name, I want my email address, I want my number, or just because I'm going to throw it out eventually after I put it in my contact list.
Right, and you're explaining pretty well on what these things are used for. It's not, it's for contact information. I guess I would just add that instead of District 2, my little name badge says District 2 Johnson County. I'd like to be able to hand it to somebody at a state meeting and they know I'm from Johnson County, not simply District 2.
I think we could look at that. Thank you. That one just jumps right out at me.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Jim,
Thank you.
What kind of a timeline are we talking about? Because you had mentioned the next time we had cards printed and we've just all received some. So are we thinking this would be next year?
Well, first of all, I try not to we've tried not to print a lot of cards for anyone.
Right.
Okay, I still have, a handful left. So I guess, if I were you, as I needed them, I wouldn't get more than 50 at a time,
So
we print them in-house.
Yeah, we print them here.
Once we approve this card, when we need them, we would request them.
We print them in-house and as you need them. And yes, and as information changes on your cards, I've seen that happen too. Recently, to me. Somebody gave me a card that was not recent.
Do we need to vote to recommend this card or just give you our kind of approval as a board that this is what we want to proceed with?
I don't think we need to vote on it.
Okay. Then is everyone all right with this change? I like it much better myself. Are you okay with the new card? With the changes that we suggested, the fax number.
Fax number, you bet. We'll get. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what we learned. We get good suggestions from our group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other comments?
Sally, did I forget anything else? How did I forget that card?
Other comments or questions?
But we got to put the card to rest. We can't keep bringing it up. We got to get it done.
Well, I think we agreed that this is what we will use as our new cards when we need them.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? Because it's time for a break.
But you're right on time, pretty much.
Well, kind of, yeah, right. We'll take a 10-minute break and, let's come back at 11:45. That's more than 10 minutes.